Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us. When I introduced, we're talking to Boone from Otis. So how's your day going so far?
Good man. I went out with on the road with my friends, the Kentucky Headhunters, over the weekend, and we went down to the Sturgis rally. They played Full Throttle Saloon, and that was a cool experience. They opened for Tom Kiefer down there, so I got to meet Tom and look through all his amps and guitars and stuff. So it was a good weekend.
Yeah, yeah. Tom's a cool guy. We have a thing over here in Maryland every year. It's called M3 Festival. It's basically like a huge '80s hair metal festival every year, and like bands like
Yeah.
his and stuff like that are always there. So it's always cool to see him.
Yeah, his set really blew me away. Of course, his to hear him sing like that for almost 2 hours is amazing. But it was cool because they did a cover of Joe Cocker, the version of him doing "I Get By with a Little Help from My Friends," and he sang it. He sang it full voice, and it was like this big soulful voice. And then he went right back, to his signature thing after that. But it was a cool experience for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, for anybody who's not familiar with your band, how would you explain, or to the fans or people who want to listen to your music, what the stylistic or like the, what you guys' band kind of sounds like?
Man, there's a lot of Southern soul influences, early wave of Southern rock like Allman Brothers, Wet Willie, Marshall Tucker, kind of mixed with our love of blues music and improvisational classic rock. So there's a lot of influences going on, but it's also it's a new rock and roll experience. It's a new thing. So a lot of fun stuff going on there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then with the band name, with Otis, how did you come up with that name for the band?
Greg Martin, the guitarist from the Kentucky Headhunters, actually named the band. There was a band called Otis in Louisville around the early 1970s. That had it was a power trio, had kind of a blues rock sound, but they didn't quite make it. So the name always stuck with him. He's like, I'd like you guys to adopt the name and run with it and see what you can do. And it's been great for us.
Yeah, yeah. And then you guys, like, being from Kentucky, how is the music scene in that and, like, with, like competition with other bands and stuff like that or camaraderie with other bands? How is the scene in that, in the South? Because everybody always assumes when you hear anybody from the South, it's always that Southern hospitality. But, sometimes in the music industry, it can be kind of cutthroat.
Man, it's a big family here, man. I mean, Kentucky's interesting because we're geographically we're located, between Chicago and like the deep South. So we have all those great musical influences that's going, but we kind of have our own thing too. Of course, Kentucky's very well known for bluegrass, folk music, and country music. But as far as the scene here, where we're from, there's actually a lot of rock and roll and blues rock bands from here. You got, like I mentioned before, you got the Kentucky Headhunters, you got Rufus Huff, Super Fuzz, Tail Draggers. So there's kind of that family of blues rock bands that we had to look up to, and that was kind of a blueprint for the things that we were going to do in the future.
Yeah, yeah. Like now, when that in the area that you are there a lot of like venues to be able to play, or do you have to try to travel out a little bit more?
When we first started, we definitely had to travel out a little bit more because this area was still dry. But now that it's wet, there's been some places that's started to pop up that's a little closer to us. Even our hometown here in Glasgow, I think there's maybe 5 or 6 places that has bands on the weekends now. So it's a great thing to see more culture and entertainment here in our hometown.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then you guys just released a single. What was it called? Last Fool in Line.
Yeah.
Talk about the the making of that and like the what the fans have said about the about the the song coming out.
Man, we've had such a great response to this song. Joe Bonamassa added us to two of his personal playlists on Spotify. We were in Classic Rock Magazine's Tracks of the Week, and there's the streaming's been really more popular than anything we've ever released. So it's been cool to see that. And we recorded the song down in Franklin, Tennessee, at the Rock House, and producer engineer Kevin McKendry worked with us. Kevin's played with George Thorogood, Brian Setzer, Delbert McClinton, all sorts of people, and just sonically and musically, Kevin was a great partner for the band because we listen to the same things and have a lot of the same views on music and how it should be recorded, and it was all done live in the room. I mean, there were only three microphones on the drums in total, so it was very organic, kind of an old school style recording.
Yeah, yeah, and then like you said with the band and stuff like that, when you guys are like making your music and stuff like that, are you guys all like in tune together as far as like the sound you want to make and like in the bands that influenced you, or are you guys all like or is it sometimes where you're like, okay, I want to sound like this, and someone's like, no, I want to kind of sound like this?
No, that never really happens for us. We listen to a lot of the same things, and we understand, what this band is and where it's supposed to do and where it's supposed to go. So we kind of take all those influences and mix them together in a way that makes sense. And it's really really a pleasure to make music in this band. And we write as a band. If you put the four of us in a room, we're going to write a song. It's just a matter of time because that's we just it happens organically. We'll just start jamming on something. It's not our songwriting process is probably a little different from most folks, for where they have an idea or they have lyrics written down, and then they take it to their band. And it's like, hey, let's make something out of this. As opposed to the four of us, we just walk in there with nothing and come out with a song.
Yeah, yeah. And then I talked to a lot of bands, because of when COVID came around and 2020 came around, it kind of basically like halted the music industry. And like I always like talking to a lot of the smaller bands, the DIY bands that like had to do a lot more to keep their band alive versus like the Metallicas and all that kind of stuff that have the money. So how was it being in a band struggling at that time when COVID was around?
Man, we had it rough. I won't lie to you, man. We got to play maybe 5 or 6 shows in 2020, and then it shut down. But we had this whole tour planned with as a co-headline tour with another band. Of course, we weren't able to do that. But our original drummer at the time, Andrew, when that happened, he decided, hey, I'm going to stay home and do the family thing. And then our original guitar player decided he was going to go play bass for an active rock band. So that just left me and John Seeley, bassist and co-founder of the band. It was just us two. And while that was going on, I had thyroid cancer. Had to get my thyroid removed and take some radiation and do that whole thing. So it took me basically a year to get the green light health wise. And then once that happened, we immediately, we started looking for two new guys to bring in the band. So we brought in Alex Wells on guitar and Dale Myers on drums. And it's really been what the band's needed, because Alex and Dale bring so much energy, and it's a bigger sounding band now. So I think going through all that on the other side, we're so much more appreciative of the opportunity to get out there and create the music we want to create and play, because we had to work really hard to get back to that point where we could do that.
Yeah, yeah. And then like I always ask people, especially like that, when you're going around, like if you could do a dream tour, like what two acts would you love to go on tour with?
Man, probably Government Mule for one. We love Government Mule, and the way they present their show. Each night's different, and it's kind of long form sets, and it can kind of go anywhere. We love Government Mule, but on the flip side of that, also Bobby Rush, who's like a legendary blues guy, 90 years old. Man, he's one of the last real deal bluesmen. So to be around him would be really cool.
What about like if you could go back in time and go on tour with any band, like that's no longer with us anymore, but you could go back and play a show. What show would you want to? Who would you want to play with?
Humble Pie for me, because I'm a big Pie fan, and they're just as much influence on us as like the Allman Brothers or any of these American bands. Man, Humble Pie laid it down.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna ask you about that too, with the influence and stuff like that. Like, who were you guys' biggest influence as far as like not really band wise, but maybe like starting to want to become a band, like become a guitarist and stuff like who kind of influenced you to like want to start writing music for yourself?
For me, it was I was going through my dad's cassette tape collection, and I came across BB King and the Fabulous Thunderbirds, and that was really the first blues music that I heard. Once I heard BB hit that big note, and I was obsessed. And I wanted to figure out how to do that. I thought if I could just play one note like that, what how great would that be? So that's kind of the path I went on. Of course, being a younger guy listening to the blues, I really listened to the blues backwards because I heard Stevie Ray Vaughan and the Fabulous Thunderbirds, stuff like that first, and then I got to Clapton, and then Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, and then on eventually on back to people like Son House and Charlie Patton, Robert Johnson. So it was interesting being influenced by those things in that order.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like I said, when you're listening to like those kind of bands too, it's just like blues and blues rockers and stuff like that. It's cool that this is kind of like you guys are sort of the this new generation of this kind of music, and it's cool
Yeah.
that this kind of music is sort of coming back to the main fold again. People are starting to. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of blues and rock musicians that are coming out nowadays.
Oh yeah, people that's trying to make the music we're trying to make. We've got to step up because our heroes are evaporating. We can't go see them anymore. Like we just lost John Mayall
Mhm.
recently, and there's so many classic rock bands that you can't go see anymore because they're just gone, and there's nobody to fill that void. So it's really cool to see a younger generation listening to that music and being inspired by it and pushing it forward.
Oh yeah, and then when you're not out, doing music and doing concerts and stuff like that, what do you have like hobbies and things that you like to explore? Other things other than just writing music?
I do, man. I'm a horror movie freak. I love classic horror films. Like American International, Universal, Hammer, all that great stuff. And then I collect blues records, of course, and vintage paperback books. And that's something my wife and I enjoy doing is going to estate sales and flea markets, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and that kind of segues into my question anyway, because it's starting to get towards that Halloween season. I'm a huge horror fan. Actually, me and my buddy have a podcast called Vampire and Devil Podcast where we talk about horror
Cool.
movies and stuff like that. So I was gonna ask you too, being that it's getting towards that time, what's your favorite kind of horror movies, or what's your favorite horror actors?
Oh man, it's so hard to pick. Like I said, I love the 60s, 70s stuff. And I was just watching Barbara Steele last night on the bus. Actually, Black Sunday. That's a classic. I love that stuff. I'm sure you're hip to this, but the Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Joe Bob, and Spinguli too. I love Spinguli, but yeah, that's my era there. But I also love a lot of the early slasher stuff. Of course, John Carpenter and Halloween, all that great stuff.
No, yeah.
The area where we're from, we live really really close to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and that's where John Carpenter went to college. And a lot of the cities and the street names are from this area, like Smiths Grove,
Oh,
Russellville, Warren County. That all comes from our area.
oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. I'm a huge fan of like John Carpenter, and like I said, especially those old like Hammer time films, and the old Universal lot. The old like, it's just funny to watch them now because they're with modern technology now and stuff like that. Younger generations look at those movies and go, "Oh my God, this is so cheesy and horrible." But it was more about acting back then than you had to emote through that makeup and stuff like that too. But that's cool that you talk about Joe Bob. I love Joe Bob. I met him and Darcy a few times, and
Oh wow.
Yeah, I love watching this show just because he always brings out sometimes he'll bring out some new movies, but I love he talks about the old like 70s and early 80s horror films.
Yeah, it's like even like with the modern technology and everything we have today, it's still it still doesn't give you the same feeling as watching like Dracula's Daughter or the early Universal films. There's something magical about what they were doing.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, like as I said, I was like, I told, I was telling some younger people about that, with like Bela Lugosi, like you would see him
Yeah.
playing like Dracula. It was all just about, the zoomed up in his face and just the way he just moves and emotes. It's like it really like those movies. If you watch those, they're not very violent. There's not very much blood, if any. Some of the Hammer films started getting a little bit more into the blood and stuff. But those old like Universal ones, it was all just about the actors, acting like Lon Chaney and the werewolf and all. It's all about how they acted and interacted with the makeup.
It always amazes me how they pulled it off because they really didn't have anything to go on. I mean, there was a handful of silent films that you could be considered in the horror genre, but I mean they were basically just making the genre itself, in real time.
What about like newer films, newer horror films? Any newer horror films you're into?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving Day too when it comes out.
Yeah,
The Eli Roth film. Still, I haven't seen Long Legs yet, but it's on the list. And Suitable Flesh, I need to watch that. That's got Barbara Crampton in it, and I'm down for anything Barbara Crampton.
yeah. That one was a really
Yeah,
good one. Yeah, Suitable Flesh was good. I like it because I'm a huge Joe Lynch and Adam Green fan from like Holliston and like the Hatchet films. So yeah, that I mean, like I said, anytime and you had Barbara Crampton in a movie and
oh yeah,
and Heather Graham. Heather Graham still looks amazing.
oh yeah, man, and of course the current Creep Show TV series
Yeah.
I love. I think it should get some more love. It's so good.
Oh yeah, yeah, I love that. So other than horror movies and stuff like that, you said you collect vinyls. Do you have like any like special vinyls that you like? Really, really super, jonesed or like excited that you have?
Yeah, man. There's a lot of blues stuff. I recently got some Muddy Waters. They were 78 RPM records, and they were from Chess, and I found those in a estate sale. And it turns out that the guy that passed away, that was the state I was buying from, was actually from New Orleans. So I thought, man, that's cool. He was listening to this stuff as it came out, and he was in that perfect area to enjoy that music. Where we're from, we probably didn't get a lot of blues and soul records distributed to this area because it's rural. It's not really close to any big cities, so that stuff that stuff for me is really hard to find. So when I find it, it's a big deal, and there's nothing like the experience of putting a record on the turntable and reading through all the liner notes and just being immersed in it. It's so hard to get people's attention these days with streaming and social media. It's just you know. Back when this stuff was made, people were just waiting to put that on the turntable and listen to the whole album in its entirety, and that's the way I like to consume music.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love the fact that nowadays this vinyl's kind of having like a resurgence now, and people are starting to enjoy these vinyls, and you got these young crowds. We were just talking about that too, with people not having like the patience and stuff like that with the streaming and the social media. We were talking about that with conventions. Friend of mine just went to a convention we have up here and got to meet Robert England, and they're talking about like long lines of like 7, 8 hours, 10 hour long lines, and as like this younger generation doesn't understand like the my generation, the Gen X generation of having to go to get tickets and having to get up early in the morning and wait a whole entire day to go get concert tickets. Where nowadays you just buy
Yeah.
everything online. Everything is so like you buy everything so instantaneously now. Everything is about like, instant gratification. It's that there's not that like, waiting in line. Oh, maybe I won't get my tickets, or I can't get my tickets, or having to like skip school or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the modern trends are kind of boring. It's just it's not as fun. But I mean, streaming is a great thing for accessibility, and I stream a lot of like box sets and stuff that I wouldn't be able to afford otherwise. So I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, but it's at least there's a way for people to listen and access the music. But then it's been a good thing for our genre of music because there's not really any dedicated radio to new rock and roll or to blues rock. You can hear active rock and you can hear classic rock, but I mean if you scan for the radio, I mean there's still bands like Fabulous Thunderbirds, Foreigner, Foghat, all these guys are still making albums, but they're not getting played on the radio. So it's just, at least, streaming's created a home for people to find that music.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I said. I was like, with the pros and the cons. Like I said, yeah, with the streaming nowadays, it makes it so much easier for people to get their music out, and get millions of people to. I mean, you can have a band that has never played a show in its life and have a million followers just because of social media, and it's crazy because it's like it's kind of like a double edged sword on that because it's like it almost kind of like doesn't seem fair for all the bands that are like really hard and like go from shows to shows and try to work as much as they can are getting a little bit of love on streams, and then you have these other bands that are like these TikTok and YouTube bands that are getting billions of streams, and like they're not even like a real band. Not saying they're not real bands, but like touring
Yeah, yeah.
bands.
It's interesting because we get a chance to play with so many different artists and different acts, and then you look at the social media numbers and the streaming numbers, and sometimes it doesn't always equate to people in the room. Sometimes the guys that's got kind of the medium numbers are able to draw the most and sell the most tickets. So it's kind of a hard thing to figure out. It's like the people on social media are not always the people buying the tickets. So then you're like, all right, how do I market to these people? How do I reach the people I'm trying to reach? So it's kind of a game that you just have to keep playing.
Yeah, yeah, and then even with like the ticket sales and stuff like that, you have a lot of these huge national acts that you've seen, especially like in the news a lot lately, with them canceling their tours and stuff like that. And a lot of it, even though some have come out and said it, but a lot of them haven't come out and said it, but it's because of ticket sales. And you know what I mean? They're trying to play these huge arenas, and you only if an arena holds 5,000 people and then 300 people bought tickets, you're not going to really, an arena's not going to want you to be there because they want, make their money. So yeah, it's crazy. It's like I like the more, the DIY, the bands who, pack up in a van and go around country for months and months on end and basically make enough money to go on to the next town.
It's expensive to tour, man, and it keeps getting expensive to tour. So man, it's a big commitment to make, but man, that's what we love to do, and ultimately in this business, that's where the money is tickets and T-shirts, and any more recorded music is just basically a promotional item because everybody streams it, and there's not much money to be had in streaming, and that is what it is. It's not it's probably not going to change anytime soon. But it's a you just gotta play the game as it is, man. There's some
Yeah.
things that you just can't change.
Oh yeah. So what do you got? What do you have any plans for the rest of this year, or beginning of next year that you can talk about?
Oh yeah, man, we got a ton of shows coming up. This weekend we'll be in Park Hills, Missouri. We're playing this place called Park Hills Underground, and then we'll be over in Western Kentucky at Mimi's Pizza, which is a new venue in Kentucky. That'll be fun. And then August 15th we're going to be at Knuckleheads with TC's Rock Trip, which is uh, He's a great drummer, great studio drummer, great live drummer. He's played with Ozzy, Black Sabbath, uh, Alice Cooper, Rob Zombie. So it's kind of a review of all the things that he's played on. So we'll be opening for him there in Knuckleheads, and we got all kinds of dates coming up. And as far as music, we're kind of doing the singles thing right now, continuing to release singles while we're kind of doing some stuff in the background to get to where we can release a full length album, which is our ultimate goal. But I mean, even the big bands, they're doing the singles thing right now, and there's like we were talking about earlier. There's positive and negative, to both sides. You can only show so much of what your band can do with each single versus where an album's like a clear picture of what your band's about. But at the same time, you get so much more promotional opportunities to you release a song and then you'll do a campaign of press around it, and it brings a lot more awareness to your band to do it that way.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean that's it's kind of bringing back like the old school days of like when you used to promote singles and stuff like that. Yeah, I feel like that's the way to go nowadays versus throwing out a whole full album straight out to begin with, and then you never know how that's gonna take to with people buying albums or CDs and like I said streaming. Where at least if you do it single by single, you can kind of gauge where you're at as far as people wanting to listen to whatever you're promoting.
Right.
So yeah, anything else you want to say to the fans before I let you go, man?
Well, thanks for having me. All things Otis, just go to theotisband.com. We got links to all the streaming sites there, all the social media. You can buy tickets right through our bands in town there, and we got some online merch as well. So thanks for having me on the show, and it was good to talk horror films with you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, hopefully, you guys come over towards, because I'm in Baltimore, so hopefully you guys come over to the my area, and we'll be able to actually talk face to face. And I'd love to see you guys play because I was listening to the music. And I dig it. I love the sound. Like I said, it's got that old school, but yet you're not trying to be anybody else. You're trying to be yourself. And I digged it.
Oh, thanks, man. We hope we can get back in the area. We've played Baltimore Soundstage before, so hopefully we can come back.
All right, cool, man. Well, I hope you have the good rest of your day, man.
You too. Good talking to you.
Oh yeah, man.